The ancient world is drowning, and the sky has collapsed into a single unbroken sheet of water. The horizon is gone, and the mountains are gone, and every landmark that once defined the world has vanished beneath a rising, endless sea. In the center of this vast and violent expanse, a lone vessel heaves against waves that strike like falling stone. The sound is a continuous roar, a world-sized waterfall pouring from the heavens and surging from the deep. Inside the vessel, every breath is measured against the weight of a planet in collapse. Outside, the waters rise toward their peak, swallowing the last remnants of a world that once thrived. For centuries, this moment has been treated as myth or metaphor, yet the deeper researchers dig into the geological record, the more they encounter a pattern that refuses to disappear: a sudden global shift, a catastrophic hydrological event, and a moment in prehistory when the world changed so violently that entire ecosystems vanished, continents reshaped, and civilizations preserved memories of a flood so overwhelming that it became the defining story of humanity's earliest age. The mystery is simple. Did a real event stand behind the ancient flood traditions found across the world? And if so, what evidence remains from the moment the waters reached their highest point? The stakes are enormous. If the flood peak was real, it would represent one of the most significant geological and cultural turning points in human history. If it was not, then the global memory of a world-ending deluge must be explained through another lens entirely. The investigation begins with the first major discovery, a discovery that forced archaeologists and geologists to reconsider the stability of the ancient world and confront the possibility that a single catastrophic event reshaped the early human landscape. Please like this video to help support evidence-based Bible documentaries. Evidence 1. The discovery. The first major piece of evidence emerges from a layer of sediment that should not exist. Across multiple continents, researchers have identified a distinctive geological boundary that appears suddenly, without gradual buildup, and with a composition that suggests rapid, high-energy deposition. This layer is known as the flood boundary. It is thick, widespread, and filled with material that indicates violent water movement on a scale far beyond regional flooding. The claim is straightforward. A global or near-global hydrological event left behind a synchronized geological signature. The source of this evidence is the stratigraphic record itself. In locations as distant as the Middle East, North America, Africa, and parts of Asia, researchers have documented sediment layers that share striking similarities. They contain mixed deposits of marine and terrestrial material, rapid burial signatures, and fossils oriented in patterns consistent with turbulent water flow. The most compelling aspect of this discovery is the speed implied by the sedimentation. Under normal conditions, layers of this thickness would require thousands of years to accumulate. Yet the sorting patterns, fossil articulation, and mineral composition indicate rapid deposition. In some regions, entire ecosystems appear to have been buried in a single event. Trees are found upright, rooted in lower layers but extending into higher ones, suggesting they were engulfed while still standing. And marine fossils appear far inland, mixed with land animals in ways that defy slow geological processes. This matters because it challenges the long-held assumption that the ancient world experienced only gradual environmental change. Instead, the evidence points to a moment of sudden upheaval. A moment when water moved with such force that it transported material across vast distances and buried entire landscapes under thick layers of sediment. The connection to the flood peak is direct. If the waters rose rapidly and reached extraordinary heights, they would leave behind precisely this kind of geological signature: a global layer of mixed sediment deposited quickly, with fossils and debris arranged in chaotic but patterned ways. One of the most striking examples comes from the Middle East, where researchers have identified a sediment layer that interrupts otherwise stable archaeological sequences. Beneath it lie signs of early human settlement, and above it lie signs of a world rebuilt. The layer itself contains debris from multiple environments, suggesting a massive influx of water that swept across the region. Another example appears in North America, where large fossil beds show evidence of rapid burial. Entire herds of animals appear frozen in motion, preserved in positions that indicate sudden catastrophe. And the sediment surrounding them is consistent with high-energy water flow, not slow accumulation. The global distribution of this boundary raises a critical question. How could such a widespread layer form without a catastrophic event of unprecedented scale? Local floods cannot explain it, nor can regional climate shifts explain it. Only a massive hydrological event capable of reshaping continents fits the evidence. This discovery forced researchers to reconsider the stability of the ancient world. It suggested that early human civilizations may have lived through a period of extreme environmental volatility. It also provided the first major scientific foothold for understanding the moment when the floodwaters reached their peak. The tension grows when examining the timing. Radiometric and stratigraphic analyses indicate that many of these layers formed within a narrow window of prehistory. Not identical, but close enough to suggest a shared cause. This clustering of catastrophic signatures aligns with the global memory of a world-ending flood preserved in ancient texts and oral traditions. The discovery does not prove the flood peak on its own, but it establishes the geological framework necessary for such an event, a world capable of sudden biological change, where water could rise rapidly enough to bury entire ecosystems and leave behind a synchronized global signature. This evidence sets the stage for the second major discovery, a discovery that does not merely suggest catastrophe, but confirms that ancient civilizations preserved memories of a real event with remarkable consistency. If you are finding this fascinating, consider subscribing so you do not miss the next investigation. Evidence 2. The confirmation. The second major piece of evidence comes not from the ground, but from the ancient world's collective memory. Across continents, cultures that never interacted recorded stories of a catastrophic flood that destroyed the world and preserved only a small remnant of humanity. These accounts are not vague or symbolic. They contain specific details that align with one another and with the geological evidence uncovered in the sedimentary record. The claim is that global flood traditions represent independent memories of a real event. The source is the vast collection of ancient texts, oral histories, and mythological narratives preserved across civilizations. From Mesopotamia to Mesoamerica, from the Mediterranean to the Pacific Islands, the stories share a core structure: a world engulfed by rising waters, a vessel or refuge, a remnant preserved, and a new world emerging after the waters recede. The consistency is striking. In Mesopotamia, the Epic of Atrahasis and the Epic of Gilgamesh describe a flood so overwhelming that even the gods tremble. In ancient India, the story of Manu recounts a deluge that destroys the world. In Greece, the tale of Deucalion and Pyrrha describes a flood that wipes out humanity. In China, the legend of Yu the Great begins with a catastrophic flood that reshapes the land. Indigenous cultures across the Americas preserve stories of a world-ending flood that forced survivors to seek refuge on mountains or in specially constructed vessels. These accounts are separated by geography, language, and culture. Yet they share structural and thematic elements that suggest a common historical memory rather than independent invention. The presence of a vessel, the preservation of a remnant, the destruction of the world, and the emergence of a new landscape appear repeatedly. This matters because it provides cultural confirmation of the geological evidence. If the flood peak was a real event, ancient civilizations would have preserved memories of it. The global distribution of flood traditions aligns with the global distribution of the flood boundary in the geological record. The details deepen the connection. Many accounts describe the waters rising to cover mountains, while others describe the opening of the heavens and the bursting of the deep. These descriptions mirror the hydrological patterns suggested by the sedimentary evidence: rapid water movement, sudden environmental collapse, a world overwhelmed by forces beyond human control. The tension increases when examining the timing of these traditions. Many of them appear in the earliest layers of ancient literature. They are not late inventions, but foundational stories that shaped the identity of entire civilizations. This suggests that the memory of the flood was carried forward from a time close to the event itself. The convergence of geological and cultural evidence creates a powerful confirmation. The sedimentary record shows a sudden global hydrological event, and the ancient world's collective memory describes a catastrophic flood that reshaped humanity. Together, they form a coherent picture of a world that experienced a moment of extreme environmental upheaval. This discovery expands the significance of the first. It shows that the flood peak was not only a geological event, but a cultural turning point. A moment so traumatic and transformative that it became the defining story of early human history. The mystery deepens when considering the third major discovery. A discovery that does not merely suggest or confirm, but reveals the mechanism behind the flood peak itself. Do you have anything to add to the conversation? Please add your voice to the comments below. Evidence 3. The revelation. The final and strongest piece of evidence comes from the study of ancient hydrological systems and the geological forces that shaped the early Earth. Researchers have identified a series of interconnected mechanisms that could produce a catastrophic rise in global water levels. These mechanisms align with both the geological boundary and the global flood traditions, providing a comprehensive explanation for the flood peak. The claim is that a combination of tectonic activity, rapid oceanic displacement, and atmospheric collapse created a hydrological event of unprecedented scale. The source is the geological record of tectonic uplift, volcanic activity, and rapid environmental change during the period associated with the flood boundary. One of the most significant discoveries is the evidence of massive tectonic shifts that occurred within a relatively short window of time. These shifts would have displaced enormous volumes of water, generating mega tsunamis capable of sweeping across continents. The sedimentary patterns found in multiple regions match the signatures of such events: chaotic deposition, mixed marine and terrestrial fossils, and rapid burial. Another key factor is the evidence of intense volcanic activity during the same period. Volcanic eruptions release vast amounts of water vapor into the atmosphere. If multiple eruptions occurred in rapid succession, they could have triggered extreme atmospheric saturation, leading to prolonged and intense rainfall, a pattern that aligns with ancient descriptions of the heavens opening and water falling in torrents. The most revealing evidence comes from the study of subterranean water reservoirs. Geological research indicates that the early Earth contained vast amounts of water trapped beneath the crust. Tectonic activity could have released this water suddenly, contributing to a rapid rise in global sea levels, a mechanism that aligns with ancient descriptions of the deep bursting forth. The combination of these forces creates a coherent model for the flood peak. Tectonic shifts displace ocean water, volcanic activity saturates the atmosphere, and subterranean reservoirs release additional water. The result is a rapid and catastrophic rise in global water levels, consistent with both the geological boundary and the global flood traditions. This matters because it provides the mechanism behind the event. The geological evidence shows the result. The cultural evidence preserves the memory. The hydrological evidence reveals the cause. The impact is profound. It suggests that the flood peak was not a mythological construct, but a real moment in Earth's history. A moment when multiple geological forces converged to produce a global catastrophe that reshaped continents, ecosystems, and civilizations. The emotional weight of this revelation is significant. It transforms the flood peak from a distant story into a tangible event. A moment when the world as humanity knew it was submerged beneath rising waters, preserved in stone, sediment, and memory. This discovery reshapes the entire narrative. It shows that the flood peak was the culmination of a series of geological processes that reached their breaking point. It reveals that the ancient world experienced a level of scaring environmental volatility far beyond what modern observers typically imagine. And it confirms that the global memory of a world-ending flood is rooted in real events. Please consider sharing this video to someone you know if you believe they might find it interesting in watching evidence-based Bible documentaries like this one. The evidence converges on a single conclusion. The flood peak was not a symbolic moment, but a geological and cultural turning point preserved across continents and civilizations. The sedimentary record reveals a sudden and catastrophic rise in global water levels. The ancient world's collective memory preserves the human experience of that event. The hydrological and tectonic evidence provides the mechanism that made it possible. Together, these discoveries form a coherent and compelling picture of a world transformed by water. A world reshaped by forces powerful enough to erase landscapes, bury ecosystems, and leave behind a global signature that endures in stone and story. The flood peak stands as one of the most dramatic moments in the history of the Earth. A moment when the boundaries between land and sea dissolved. When the ancient world was submerged beneath rising waters, and when that moment was preserved in the deepest layers of the Earth and the oldest memories of humanity. The investigation ends here, but the mystery remains. The flood peak is not only a geological event, but a reminder of how fragile the ancient world truly was, and how much of its story still waits beneath the surface, waiting to be uncovered.